بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قال الله تعالى في شان حبيبه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد بارك صلوا عليه صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. There's a saying here, whenever something comes up, they say, follow the money. And, we kind of alluded to that or mentioned this after Jummah last Friday, and I'm going to come back to this point. I figured, kind of go into a little bit more detail. And of course, everything related to all of the things that are going on today. There's a concept here, or concept amongst the Christians, that they talk about original sin. And when they say that, they're talking about Adam alayhi salam eating from the tree. And they refer to that as original sin. We know that from the Quran that was not the initial sin. If we read the Quran, we know that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the angels to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, so all of them prostrated. And of course, Iblis was also included in this command because he was amongst the angels, even though he's not from among them. And so he refused. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't simply mention that he refused. He also says why he refused. أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. He refused and he was arrogant. And because of that, he's amongst the disbelievers. It's one thing simply to refuse a command. Unfortunately, when we look at ourselves, there's so many commands of Allah and His Messenger ﷺ that we do not fulfill. But it's another thing when someone becomes arrogant about it. And then we also know from the Quran as well, not only was he arrogant about it, he also justified it. There are two aspects of the arrogance. One is simply he refused and he was arrogant, and he says, "Ana khayrun min." I am better than him. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked him, what caused you to stop, what caused you not to obey the command, he said, "Ana khayrun min." I am better than him. And then he reasons it that you made me from fire and you made him from clay. So he also justifies his arrogance and his refusal of the command. Arrogance and jealousy go hand in hand. Because Adam alayhi salam simply wasn't arrogant against, Iblis simply wasn't arrogant against Adam alayhi salam, but he was also jealous of him. Because, Iblis had worshipped Allah for thousands of years. Not a place on the surface of the earth where he had not made sajda to Allah. And Adam alayhi salam had not done anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala simply said, when I blow my soul into him, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ, that when I blow my soul into him, then you prostrate. He hadn't even made any zikr. He had done nothing. And yet, Iblis, who had done so much, is being commanded to prostrate to Adam. So this made him jealous. At that point, what has he done? Look at what I've done. So again, arrogance, jealousy, All of these go together. There's another concept that actually was given a name in the past few decades, which is known as the prosperity gospel. Which is that, when God loves somebody, he makes him wealthy in this world. And this is what they say. So look at how much money he has. God must really love him. Which even when you read their book, has no basis. And when you look at the life of Isa alayhi salam, very ascetic life, he had no belongings at all. Literally, the only belongings he had were the clothes on his back. That was it. And he also made the statement once that no one has attained true piety unless there is no difference for him between sand and gold. So they claim to be following him, and yet what they preach is the total opposite of what he preached and what he lived. But this notion is not new, and all of this ties back to the arrogance and the jealousy. When we look in history, Namrud was the richest man of his time, king of the known world. And yet, from a standpoint of any piety, he had absolutely none. He was arrogant to the extent that he claimed to be God. And anyone who challenged him, because these people who are at this state, when they see anybody that threatens them, and not in the sense that that person comes and threatens them, but simply they're threatened by someone else, because they realize that that person is truly better than them. Like Namrud or Nimrod, when he sees Ibrahim alayhi salam, he knows. But that arrogance and that jealousy won't allow him to accept. So they lash out violently against such people. The interesting thing is, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to destroy Namrud, he didn't send an army of elephants or an army of lions or an army of anything, that would be considered, a majestic creature. He sent a mosquito. And not just any mosquito, a mosquito who had a leg that was bad. And what does that mosquito do? It goes and flies into his sinuses. And sometimes this part of the head is hurting, and sometimes that part of the head is hurting, and it's buzzing around in there, and it's driving him crazy. And then the one who is beating him, because he feels better when somebody beats him on the head. So the guy that's beating him is someone that he himself is paying to beat him. And eventually kills him. But again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have sent some, massive army against him. But to humiliate him in this world, and there's only humiliation in the next for him as well, he sent a mosquito. A lame mosquito, not just any mosquito. So all of these powers today that are so arrogant of what they think is their strength. When Allah's judgment comes, he doesn't need, what we think is something strong. He definitely doesn't need any of us. which should worry us. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as-samad. He is free from all needs. But the reason I say that should worry us is the question is, where do we fall in all of this? Are we truly on the side of Allah? That we ask Him to use us for His purpose? Or are we on the side of Shaitan? When we look at Fir'aun, the same thing. Richest man in the world at that time. All of the wealth. His advisors, Haman, Harun. Extremely wealthy people. Of course, all of that wealth they acquired by stealing it from the people that they were oppressing. And we know what happens. When Allah's decision comes, there is no escaping it. But what happens? What do these people think? The mindset. As I said, the original sin or the initial sin is arrogance, which is coupled with jealousy. So why are these people always in pursuit of the money? Because or the wealth, because they think when they acquire it, that now they're somebody. Now they look down upon everybody else. Same thing during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we look at the leaders of Quraysh and their arrogance, what was their arrogance? Oh, look at us. We have all this wealth. We have these positions because we are wealthy. And everybody else is beneath us. And as I mentioned last Friday, after Jummah, if we look at the incident when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam starts to make da'wah openly, we know for the first 3 years he's preaching secretly. Then the verse in Surah Shu'ara is revealed. وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, and call those who are close to you. So he goes on Safa, on the mountain of Safa. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam climbs on the mountain of Safa. And he calls Banu Muttalib and Banu Hashim. He didn't call all of Quraysh, just these two clans, the ones that were close. And anyone, it was custom amongst Quraysh that if anyone had something very important to tell them, they would climb up on Safa and call the people. And everybody knew that this is some very important announcement, so they would all come running. So he calls them. And all of Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib come running, including Abu Lahab, who at that time was in the middle of a business transaction. He was about to finalize a business transaction, and he leaves that transaction to come and listen to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, and we know, I won't go into the details, but he asked him, if I tell you that there's an army on the other side of the mountain, will you believe me? They said, of course. You're Sadiq al-Amin, you have never lied to us. And he says, then I tell you that if you say La ilaha illallah tuflihu, that if you accept La ilaha illallah, that there is no one worthy of worship but Allah, then you will be successful. And this is when Abu Lahab throws up his hand. And he says that you called us here for this? And of course he has some other choice words, and then he leaves. Why? No, because it interrupted his business transaction, his money. That's what upset him so much. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had called them and then told them about some business dealings, how to increase their wealth, he would have been very happy. But that's not what he called them for. This is what he was so upset about. This is why, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, Al-kufru millah wahida, that disbelief is one. Why do they all get together when it comes to fighting against faith, fighting against belief? Why is it so easy for them to get together? Because the reality is their God is the same. Their God is the money. That is what they worship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed within the nature of mankind to worship. But then he gives us the choice. What do we worship? Either you worship Allah or you worship other than Allah. And if you look at all those that worship other than Allah, at some point they all get together, and it's all about the money. Same thing when the coalition came against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Khandaq. Ghatafan, that joined that coalition, that was number 2 as far as the size of the coalition. The number 1 group in the coalition was Quraysh, of course. Number 2 was Ghatafan, after Quraysh, as far as having the most soldiers. They had been promised a significant share of the dates of Medina Munawwara. That's why they joined. Again, the money. If we look at all throughout the Muslim world, when the colonization took place, from Morocco all the way, to India and even beyond, Malaysia and Indonesia, the Far East. Why did they come in? To loot and plunder the wealth. If you look at the subcontinent, the East India Trade Company was formed in 1600. Exactly as they say, the East India Trade Company, the whole purpose of that company was to take over India. Why? Because they wanted the wealth. What do? They come in. So they come in and, subjugate the people. They cause famines, 40-something odd famines that they triggered. And for a couple of bucks, they have no problems killing anybody and everybody. If you look at these people, honestly, for a couple of bucks, they can sell their mother. This is, the reality of the world that we live in. When we look at everything that is going on in the world, again, follow the money. That directs you as to what the goals, and we already know what the goal of the opposing people is. Again, to increase their wealth because of their arrogance. It's interesting if you read the reasoning. Of course, they have to justify what they're doing. If you read the reasonings behind why they went into these various places, they always talk about civilizing the barbarians. Even the term barbarian it comes from the word Berber. The Muslims of North Africa were known as Berbers. So when the Muslims started going into Europe, they coined this term, these barbarians. This is where they get the word from. But they always talk, whether it's, it doesn't matter where they go, but they're going to go and civilize the barbarians. They went to the Philippines, and it's the same exact wording, that they're going to go and civilize the barbarians. And how did they civilize them? They go over there and they give them gonorrhea and syphilis and wipe out half the population. This is how they civilized them. But when they come into Muslim countries, they also realize certain things. Again, the subcontinent is an easy example of this. Because if you look at the subcontinent back then, that was what is today India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, parts of Afghanistan, all of that was India at that time. So when they entered India, they realized something. Because normally people are united by their dress, their language, their food, things like this. When they came to the subcontinent, you have over 100 different languages being spoken. Every area has its own food. Every area has its own dress. The way they walk, the way they talk, everything was different. You go 10 miles this way, and it's a totally different language, and you go 20 miles another way, and it's totally different food. Everything that normally would unite a people did not exist there. Yet they were all united. Why? They were united under La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they realized very quickly that if we want to control them, then this is what we got to break. This is what we have to change. The objective never changed. The objective was always to loot and plunder the wealth. Same thing that is going on in the world today. Everything that we see, again, if you follow the money, it tells you what the objective is. But because of that, when they realize that this is how we have to break these people, the thing is, if you go to a Muslim and you tell him, don't practice Islam, don't read the Quran, don't do this, don't do that, he will immediately become defensive for things that are obvious. So the best way to do this is from within. Hire scholars, see who can be bought. Again, money. Who can be bought? So you buy those people and have them speak your language now. And what I mean here by language is what you want them to say. And then at the same time on the side, you groom your own scholars. Start schools and stuff that get them to teach them what you want them to know. And you test the waters, which is interesting because the way they tested the waters in the subcontinent was the same philosophy of the Khawarij shortly after the time of Ali radiallahu anhu. One of the first things they did was they said to the people, they had scholars who said, a person only earns what he does. That's it. No one can benefit anybody else. So if someone dies, then you're reciting the Quran for them or making dua for them has no meaning. This was the first litmus test that they used. And when you had people that bought into this, and started accepting this, then say, now we can go on to the bigger things, the bigger issues. but then slowly changing more and more things until you get to the point where they talk about Rasulullah so like anybody else. And the pet phrase that they like to use for this one is that, oh, he's just a human being like us. There's no difference between me and him. So once they break that connection, because love, Iman is the love of Allah and His Messenger. So. And love demands that perfection. You never hear somebody saying that, oh, when I saw him so cross-eyed, I just became more in love with him. Or when I saw him, when I saw his bald head, I just loved him even more. No one says that. This is why when we describe Rasulullah, there are two words in Arabic that are used. Kamal and Jamal. Beauty and perfection. But again, when that connection is broken, then everything else becomes easy. And this is why they rule over us, because we have lost that connection. This is why we see them killing us, and we can't even say anything. And for them killing us is no problem, because they've already taken our Iman. But again, getting back to the issue of following the money, and when we look at the wealth that is on the coast, the $550 billion worth, and this is 2019 numbers, $550 billion worth of natural gas that is underneath that land. It explains why they want it. And again, because money is their God, they have no problems doing anything to get it. And all of these people that worship the money have no problems getting together to steal it. Which is also why none of them speak against it. And if anyone does speak against it, then you're the one that's a danger to society. The sadder aspect of this is that unfortunately most of us who claim to be Muslims, as far as following the money, our mindset has become the same. Even when the colonial powers left the Muslim world, they didn't leave. They may have physically left, but they left their mindset with us. So that changed the way we think. You go to many Muslim places, so-called Muslim countries, and you talk to the average Muslim, and they are in awe of Western society. How great it is. Anything good about this society is also whatever they have stolen from us. You look at even the laws that have any decency in them are the laws they have stolen from us, from the Muslims, from the believers. Nothing good about this society is anything that they themselves came up with. People talk about the technology. What good is the technology? The only thing they use it for is to kill us. Now they don't have to look at us in the eyes when they kill us. They just press a button. And they call this advancement. It's interesting, even the statistics here. From the second Gulf War on forward, if you look at the number of soldiers who have died in action, it's just a few thousand. Not very large number. If you look at the number of soldiers who have committed suicide, it's over 100,000. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away the peace of mind. But this again falls on us as well, because this is why when you look at the Muslim world, there's also no peace of mind, because we have left Allah and His Messenger. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So He has taken away that peace from us as well. So may He grant us that peace again, and may He fill our hearts with that true love, His true love, and the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, His family, His companions, and all of those whom they love. And may He protect those who are being oppressed in Palestine. And as far as the oppressors are concerned, may He give them Iman, but if Iman is not for them, then may He destroy them. And those who have not made Sunnah, go and make Sunnah, inshallah.